Imran Hussain says he wants to strongly advocate for a ceasefire in Gaza. He was the Shadow Minister for the New Deal for working people. I mean, realistically, probably not a huge number of people. I mean, he's not exactly a household name in Imran Hussain, yet this is a blow for Sir Keir Starmer, surely.
I mean, it's a disappointment for everybody in the Labour Party. We don't want to see good frontbenchers resign, whether or not they're household names. But, I mean, particularly when actually Keir, I think, was really magnanimously allowing lots of flexibility on this particular issue. He sees that different people have got different perspectives and those are held in good faith.
The Labour Party is pretty divided over this, is it not? I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I'm simply saying, I mean, I personally don't think a ceasefire would work. I don't think Hamas would observe it. But there are various councillors who've resigned, as I've mentioned. There are various people who behind the scenes are talking to Keir Starmer about this. It's not exactly a ringing endorsement of his leadership, is it?
Well, I mean, I don't really think that a ceasefire would work either, but I don't think it's a realistic demand. But I recognise that there are people in my party who hold that position in absolutely good faith, people who are so appalled by what happened in Israel on October the 7th and who are disgusted by Hamas and their role in it, and indeed Tehran's role in it, though now that's up for debate after the Hezbollah statement on Friday. So, point is, I think that a party that can cope with having those debates and where actually the vast majority of the time those debates are happening in a really collegiate and professional way, I think that's a good thing.
It's interesting, actually, because, as I said, there was that unity on Israel and those attacks. There were a few pro-Palestinian protesters outside the secure zone in Labour, but inside the secure zone in Liverpool, there seemed to be things where sort of very much people were being respectful, and certainly Sir Keir Starmer mentioned in his leader speech as well. I mean, in terms of a humanitarian pause, that is not an option that has really gained much traction in recent weeks in terms of support for Keir Starmer on that from the Labour Party. He seems to be continuing to lose support. Is that a fair analysis?
I don't know if continuing to lose support. I think that...
Do you not think this is really an issue of support for Keir Starmer? This is just what people think about it, and actually it's not really a big issue of Labour policy necessarily?
I think that right now it's obviously something which the party has struggled to entirely get hold of in terms of the media narrative, but I just don't see this having a long-term political impact for the leadership.
Yep.
What I think is important is it reminds us that there's this massive constituency within the Labour Party that feels very strongly about this issue, and that's not kind of going to go away, even though they are really supportive of Keir and his leadership and really convinced by what he's done for the party. And, you know, part of why they're so convinced by what he's done for the party is because he's got rid of anti-Semitism to a very large extent. Yeah. And that's a really wonderful thing.
It's interesting in London, if we can return to this march for a second. I mean, I keep coming back to this statement by Rishi Sunak, who said, talking about Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, he says, he has said that he can ensure that we safeguard remembrance for the country this weekend, as well as keep the public safe. Now, my job is to hold him accountable for that. I have heard very little from Sadiq Khan on this as the Mayor of London. And I also wonder whether you think Sir Mark Rowley's job is safe if things do kick off this weekend, which I sincerely hope they don't.
I really hope they don't as well. Is his job safe? I think the government would love to use him as a political football. If he gets sacked, it won't be because of this, it will be because they wanted to sack him anyway, and this was their excuse. That's how these things work, particularly with Met Police chiefs.
Should the march go ahead, do you think?
I mean, I don't believe in a ceasefire, as in I don't think a ceasefire is a possible demand.
You wouldn't be on the march yourself, necessarily.
Well, exactly. So, right. so in that sense, I don't think it should go ahead. But I really strongly believe in the right of people to do this kind of protest. And for me, like, the cenotaph is a very special thing for me because when I was a kid, I sung in the choir that sings there every year for Remembrance Day service.
Really?
I sang that, it's wearing ridiculous clothes for the Queen.
Wow.
For the country, you know, and it really matters to me. And I've, like lots of us, my grandparents were in the war effort in different ways. And I think that, you know, like everybody, I think, looks at the cenotaph, looks at Remembrance Day services around the country and thinks of sacrifice, of course. Yep. But it's really important for us to think about what that sacrifice was for. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't for nothing. It was for freedom, I would say. That's how I read it. And absolutely at the heart of our freedoms, and I would say this to people who care about civil liberties, is the right to protest and the right to freedom of expression. And you don't say, oh, because 1% or 5% or however many percent of people in this protest are nasty, therefore we're going to take away the right to freedom and freedom
My
of
point, I basically agree with you, but my point is that there should have been more of an effort. There was an effort, but there should have been more of an effort to say to the organisers of this march, actually, do you know what, you've had 4 of them. You can have 4 more if you want, you can have as many as you like, but this weekend, could you just respect people, respect the war dead, realise that we need to lower the temperature in this and voluntarily not do it?
I mean, as I said, I don't particularly want the protest to happen anyway because I don't really believe in it. I don't believe in the ceasefire.
Me too.
But I really strongly believe that you've got to defend the right of people to do this kind of thing, because if you don't, you're going down a really slippery slope, and you genuinely have to ask, like, what did people fight for? What did they sacrifice their lives for if it wasn't this kind of freedom? The freedom to do things that we disagree with.
OK, Richard Parsley, thank you very much.